All right, so welcome everybody. This is episode one of Real Talk with Roderick. It's a cross-cultural talk series that we started here at the Wake Forest University School of Business, so we can get to know each other just beyond just transactional communications, and we can really get to know the rich diversity of cultures within this community. So here with my co-host, Tina Gurkovich, and today we're going to talk with a few students, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, starting with Makeenie Robinson.
Hello, my name is Makeenie Robinson. I am an MSBA student here at Wake Forest. My undergrad was from the University of Virginia in Foreign Affairs and African American and African Studies, and I'm excited to be here today.
All right, thank you. And we're going to jump over to D.
Hi, I'm Deekshanya Roy, and I'm currently also an MSBA student. I did my undergrad in psychology and philosophy back in India. And yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Now we're going to jump over to Bashir.
My name is Bashir Abdelaziz, and I'm also a Wake Forest MSBA student. And I'm actually from the Triad, so I went to the University of North Carolina at Greensboro and did my undergrad in political science with a focus on international politics.
All right, and last but not least, I'll let Tina give a proper introduction of herself.
Hi everyone, I'm Tina. I'm from Serbia and I lived most of my life in Italy. And I did my undergrad at Rutgers University in supply chain management. And I'm also in the same program with everyone here, the MSBA at Wake here.
Cool, cool. Now, we like to keep it real on this, this video series. And so I'm going to start off with the first question, then I'm going to let Tina take the floor. But Makeenie, I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you, what is something about you that makes you unique that most people don't know? And let me clarify, the only way they would get to know this is if they really got to know you, because it just wouldn't be something you would just come out just screaming from the rooftops. But the thing with people, you just said, man, people don't even know this about me. And they just be surprised. What is that thing?
Well, people always say I don't have an accent, but I am from Jamaica. I was born and raised there for 12 years. So there's that. But I would say on a deeper level, something unique about me that people don't typically know surface level is that I'm super adventurous. I love like to travel, but also within that, I love trying different things from different cultures. So such as food, I've tried things from camel to I've tried ostrich, I've tried like balut. I've just tried a bunch of different things from a bunch of different cultures. So I'm very adventurous whether it comes to food or just traveling in general. So that's something I think most people probably wouldn't get just from a very small conversation with me or just surface level looking at me.
You win. I definitely, you had me at camel. I would never have known that. Okay, you win. Oh no, Deeksha, we're gonna give it the floor to you. You may win. Who's gonna win? Because so far McKinney's got this.
Um, I was actually gonna say something like usually if someone asks me what's like a fun fact about you, because nobody would know unless I actually told them this. I have moved around like 16 times. I don't know if maybe some of you know this, maybe some of you don't, but yeah, between India and US, I've moved around a lot within the US, grew up half my life in India and half here. And so just overall like 16 times. And so that's like 12 new schools. So I've been a new student again and again, more times than I can like count. So I think that's like an experience that not many people have, and it's like kind of a bittersweet thing to think about. You always think like, oh, new student, it sucks to be the new student, but sometimes like there are learnings from it too that I realize now after all these times. But yeah, that's probably something most people don't know.
Wow, that's so cool. And I have so many questions, but I'm going to come back because 16 times, I mean, you've got me beat. I thought I moved around a lot, but and how old are you?
I'm 21.
Wow, you win. You got me being in terms of you got me being in terms of having moved around. I definitely didn't move that much before the age of 21. That's incredible. I can't even imagine how, yeah, so many questions. But we'll get back to that later. Bashir, last but not least.
Okay, so mine is probably going to sound a little bit boring in comparison to both of theirs. Um, Two things kind of came to mind. Firstly, I think someone who sees me day to day in class and stuff like that. I get the response from a lot of people that you don't really have emotions or no feelings. You're just like uh, constantly present. But I feel like I'm kind of overly empathetic, uh, just from like background and growing up. And then prior to a year ago, I'm also a really good cook, funny enough. But I did start an Instagram page, so now I guess it's something that maybe some people will know.
Hey, what do you cook? You can't just say you're a good cook and not tell us what you cook.
Yeah,
I think the
Bashir.
best cuisine is Italian that I make, but my dad was a chef for like 46 years, so I can kind of I sushi, Italian, Asian, kind of a mix.
My new best friend, Bashir. Hey, I got you, Bashir. Hey, hey, Bashir, me and you gonna start hanging out, man.
Sounds
And
good.
hey, hey, that's my new best friend. All right, I'm gonna turn it over to Tina, and you know what? I'm gonna ask Tina the same question. Tina, we can't let you off the hook. We can't let you off the hook. And then from there, once you answer, I want you to ask them some questions, but we can't let you off the hook on this one.
Yeah, no problem. For me, kind of similar to Dee, I've lived around the different places all my life. I don't think I can compare with 12 schools, but I've jumped around 3 times. I lived in Sudan and I lived in Italy. So at first glance, you wouldn't know that about me. And right now, it's kind of transitioned into being who I am because I got to live in all these different places. So I'm grateful for it, even though it was kind of tough at first. And because of that, I'm grateful that I speak 3 languages now. I can speak Serbian, Italian, and English. But I wanted to ask you guys, when it comes to assumptions, what assumptions do you think people make about you? And we can just circle back to Makeenie first.
That's a good one. I would say that an assumption that people might make about me would be oftentimes people don't realize how outgoing I am. Just because my demeanor is pretty quiet. I'm reserved for the most part. I'm like an introverted extroverted introvert, which whatever that that match up. But also people wouldn't know would people would assume that I'm always okay, I guess, or I just am with the way I carry myself, I'm always presenting myself as happy and people always think, oh, you never have anything going on, but that's definitely not true. Like I carry my struggles with me every day, but that doesn't mean I have to show it. So, nothing in my life has been perfect from like my background and where I've come from the journey from Jamaica to here. So it's just like you carry your pain, but you don't always have to show it, if that makes sense. Not necessarily I'm in pain like 24/7, but it's just some experiences that I've had, people would like never it changes people and people would never understand like why I'm so happy, but it's because I've experienced certain things and I find the joy in all the small things. That's a long way of saying it, but I definitely like my happiness and the way I present myself is because of the things I've gone through. And I've just learned that you can't let the little things in life get you down. So why not focus on the good and present that every day?
Wow, that was beautiful. Yeah, snaps. Okay, let's go D next. What assumptions do you think people make about you?
That's actually a tough one. I think I think people often like think, oh, she's really nice. And I am. I don't mean to say that's an incorrect assumption. But I think most people just know me kind of like surface level, how I truly feel about things or my opinions and what I like doing in a day. Like those are all things that you'd only get to know if you talk to me more often. And the surprising thing is, though, that I talk to a lot of people, talk to people every day, kind of catch up with them. And so I think kind of similar to what Makini said, I seem a little bit extroverted, but I'm actually, maybe it's the opposite to Makini, but I'm actually more of like an introverted person. So I have like a short social battery, but you wouldn't know that if I didn't tell you. So I think maybe people assume that, oh, like I'm social, love hanging out with people and things like that. But oftentimes that's only for like the short span that I'm with them. And outside of that, I'm doing my own thing. So I think maybe that's an assumption.
I definitely resonate with that. And I think actually most people here do too, right? I'm guessing Bashir as well. Thank you for sharing. And Bashir, what about you?
Yeah, I think I share similar parallels, both Makeenie and Deek, on some of the stuff they shared. Funny enough, I don't usually reflect too much on the assumptions or what people may assume about me, because I tend to find that I'm always wrong in those assumptions. So I don't give it too much thought nowadays. If I had to guess, I think people might think I'm more on the reserved side, introverted side at first. But I think once I kind of get comfortable with a certain group of people, then I'm pretty much like I can't stop talking, or I might say a lot of, you know, dumb things at times. But yeah, in terms of like people's assumptions in general, whether they be negative assumptions, I've never let them really get to me. And I feel like sometimes the positive assumptions I tend to get wrong as well.
Cool.
Very, very interesting, Bashir. I say, hey, we're gonna learn a lot about Mr. Bashir. We got to pull it out of him. We're gonna get it. We're gonna get it. So here's my question. Now, Tina and I, we're gonna tag team y'all. So, Makeenie, you're from Jamaica, right? How old were you when you left?
I was 12.
Okay. So, and do you go back and visit?
I do.
Okay.
The last time I went back to visit was 2022, which I got to
Okay.
visit twice that year. And then this year I should be going at least twice. That's a go.
Okay. Okay. So tell tell us about, you know, growing up in Jamaica and things that, let's say, the average person wouldn't know about Jamaica unless they either went there or unless they really talked to somebody from there. Because a lot of times, like you talked about the assumptions, right? And this is across the board. I've got a mental map. When you hear somebody say Jamaica, there's something my mind goes to. Somebody says Serbia, my mind goes to this. Somebody says India, like all these countries, United States, every country has this kind of go-to. People just default to something, but that may or may not be correct, right? It may not be what you want somebody to think about your country without nuanced context and all of that. So with Jamaica, like, what are things that you would like to just share about where you grew up and where you go visit that the average person probably makes the wrong assumption on?
Right. Well, there are so many assumptions that have been made about Jamaica that I'm sure everybody's minds can go to, but I think that one of the most important things that I always reflect on is our education system. Our education system in Jamaica is extremely, like, it's really, really good. Like everyone there, like the level of education and things that I was taught, like, for example, I came here when I was 12, so that's middle school. A lot of the things that I did in middle school were a recap of what I was doing in what we consider elementary school. So it's like people don't understand that that knowledge gap is there. So in the assumption that, okay, when, kids from other countries are coming to America and then the education gap is kind of there, that it's because they pride us on, like, those educational values and teaching us things at an earlier age, or just starting to an earlier age, or just a different means that you can learn. Of course, there's still public school, private school, but wherever it is, the education system, like across the board, is really amazing in Jamaica. There are just different sides of Jamaica. There's a touristy beaches, but there's also like the countryside. There's also a very like city-like area that can vary. But one thing that we all have in common wherever we are in Jamaica is that value of community. Like you can call on your neighbor for anything. You can literally go over to the next person's house and like borrow a cup of sugar or just get a cup of sugar. Like it's really, that community building is definitely there in Jamaica, and people don't emphasize that enough, which is why people always say that we're nice people, which is an assumption that they make, just because that's something we also pride ourselves on. Like in Jamaica, our motto is, oh my gosh, now I'm blanking. But out of basically, in short version, out of like many people, we are one, essentially. And there are so many different cultures in Jamaica. There are like, Jamaicans of like the African diaspora, there are Chinese Jamaicans, there are Indian Jamaicans, there's so many. So like out of many, one people indeed, like there's so many different types of people in Jamaica, not just what is presented in the media. So just that idea of community and diversity is definitely there. And we pride ourselves in making sure that, like, help thy neighbor. That like philosophy is definitely like there in Jamaica.
Wow.
I want to ask a follow-up question to that.
I'm
So
blown away. Seriously, like you have wow, you need to be the spokesperson for Jamaica. Like they need to pay you. You
I
need to
did
be
not
the
do it
ambassador.
justice, but a little bit.
No, but I mean, that's thank you like for sharing it because like you just like yeah, you added to everybody, all of us, you added to like something new to when we are if somebody asks me about Jamaica now I have a narrative I can tell, right? And that's why I always like to learn from people who can tell me a narrative because I'm like, hey, I've talked to someone who said this about the country, right? So then that expands the way I think about the country versus just like you said, what I hear in the media or just these stereotypical messages you just get over the years from movies and all of that. So wow, that was wow. Thank you,
Thank
more than a bargain for
All right.
it. Next in the list, I'm gonna come back to you too, Tina, because I would love to get that same thing from you. You know, especially about Serbia, and you know for what you remember. And I know you go back and visit, but let's jump to D on this one. So same question, D. What are the things about where you grew up? You said you grew up in India, right?
Yeah.
And how old were you when you left?
So I left when I was around 4 years old and then
Okay.
came back for a couple of years, came back to the US and then came back to India for another 4 years. Finally came back for university because I did undergrad there. So like in sum, it's probably like 8 years, 10 years there, I'd say.
Okay. Well, shoot, answer that same question because you got a definitely different type of experience, like going and coming back. So you have more of this type of comparative analysis. You're going one
Yeah.
place and then you're going back and you had to adapt and you had to go back. So I would
Yeah.
love to hear that story. Like what are things that you even yourself learned about, you know, India going back and forth to different national cultural contexts and coming back and having to adapt to a different national context.
Yeah, it's kind of like a live Venn diagram throughout my life, like, in each stage trying to come up with certain things that I learned about each country. But yeah, I actually like discovered recently through our program because of, how many people you get to talk to that Jamaican culture is similar to Indian culture, African culture is very similar to Indian culture. So I've kind of like got to know more about that. So everything that Makeenie said also applies absolutely to India, whether it's like the education part or even the community part. Like, especially about the neighbors. Like, usually in India, the way it works is if you're in a certain like colony or like you live in a certain area, you know everybody around you. Like that's just normal to do. But in the US, I've noticed that you may not even know the person who lives upstairs or downstairs, So it's very different in that sense. And I really enjoy that kind of community bonding. But apart from what McKinney's already said, I think something unique to India would probably be like the spices and the food. I struggle in US to find the exact spice that I'm looking for unless I go to like an Indian store here. It's called masala, and I say the word like that's the exact translation of spice to like how we say it in India. Despite all the many languages that people speak in India, you say masala, people will know what you're talking about. So it's like there's like a chicken masala, there's like a goat masala, then there are different kinds of masalas, but each thing goes in a specific dish. And so there's just so many different variations of spices. And I think that's something that comes to mind when I think about India and probably something that other people should know as well.
So you had, so I know about like, like I always order like, let's say some lamb tikka masala or something like that.
Yeah.
But masala, the word itself means spice. Is that
Yeah.
what you, oh, I didn't know that. Okay. I knew naan means bread, right?
Naan.
Yeah, naan,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So guys, hey, give me some of the naan bread. And people are like, no. You don't need to say naan bread, just say naan. And so
Yeah.
now I didn't know masala meant spice. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. I learned something new. Thank you. Bashir. Same question.
So I think in regards to assumptions, so I'm Palestinian American. I was born in Greensboro, North Carolina, but my dad immigrated here when he was like 17 years old. So growing up, I think, there's the stereotypical assumption of someone from the Middle East, desert, like kind of underdeveloped, things of that nature. But I visit a lot, but to me, I think it would shock a lot of people if they got out a little bit more and got to travel just to see how much more developed I think actually the Middle East is from the Triad, for instance, especially in places like Qatar and the Gulf countries. And um, yeah, I think there's a more negative connotation typically from people that I've talked to here about the Middle East in general. But similar to what Makeenie and Deek said, like it's one big community. I mean, you know every single person in that neighborhood. Um, like my grandmother knew their grandmother, who knew their grandmother, and you constantly know who everyone is. So someone who grew up here in the U.S., like I did not have those experiences growing up. Um, I knew a couple of people in the neighborhood, but there's some people that to this day, and I've been in the neighborhood for 25 years, I still don't know. So I think that's the biggest difference. In terms of like other stuff that's good, I mean, the food is great in the Middle East. Everything is kind of farm to table because everyone has their own like vegetations, crops, and cattle there. Um, whether it be a restaurant or whether it be your friend's house. And yeah, I mean, in terms of assumptions, I don't think it's the most positive assumptions today, specifically because of all the conflict kind of going on in the region. But I hope to be someone who can kind of bridge the gap between the two communities, since I'm a part of both community.
Well said, well said. And you made me think about something. I know that's the and all y'all referenced that sense of community, and you made me think of just like you're right, just as a culture in America, like it's so individual, right? I was still, no, you have your little micro communities, but I know like African American community where I grew up very tight, but just broader U.S. culture is more individualistic. And when I started living overseas, and visiting different countries, to all your points, I saw how people are more, it's just more that sense of community. Like you just go over your neighbor's house, or people share more. People look at like it was just somebody just, oh, just come to our house to eat. Like you don't want anything in return. It's like it's no transaction, right? In the States, you always think, oh, you must want something. Like, well, no, just come over and just eat. People just share their food and home, and it's not even about how much money they have. Here people are like, okay, see Makeenie, so you came over, yeah, you owe me. People like keep it, tabs and all of that. Years ago, I met this guy on a plane, never will forget, and he was telling me about Lebanon. And I didn't know much about the Middle East then. I was like much younger, and he was like, "Oh man," he said, "it used to be like the Switzerland of the Middle East." He just talked about how beautiful it was and all of that, and that moment just reminded me of how much I didn't know about the world. And so that was kind of like that beachhead for me, where I started thinking like, wow, I really don't know much about the world. This guy's telling me about some Switzerland in the Middle East, and like you said, Bashir, I had this kind of negative connotation of the Middle East because that's all I ever heard. It was always just trouble. Like you never in the media that I would give, it's nothing positive. And so to hear that, I said, wow, let me explore more. Let me expand my horizons, right? So another story for another time. But Tina,
Like,
same question for you.
it's actually really cool how they're all very similar, but like different in the US. Because I was going down the same route of that sense of community. And I found that that's something that I lack here and that I look for when I try to make friends or learn about people. But in Serbia, it's basically the same. Everyone knows everyone, and you live within your family, and it goes for generations. So there's a bunch of people that some of them you've only met once in your life, but they have this unconditional love for you. So under every circumstance, they're willing to help you. And one thing that I found that was interesting in both Serbia and Italy, both places that I've lived, when you're over 18 or like late or early 20s, you're not expected to figure out life and go live by yourself and already have a job. But a lot of people still at the age of 25 live with their parents, and it's completely normal. I know here that's very different. Like even now at our college age, 20s, everyone's living by themselves or starting to get jobs, but it's very different where I'm from. So I guess you're not expected to figure everything out by yourself. And then another thing that I thought was really fun to share about Serbia. In Serbia, we have a big hostess culture that when you go to somebody's house or if you go to get coffee with someone, you always sit there for at least 2 hours. you don't like spend 30 minutes and then just leave. So coffee culture is very different. And Serbians love to sing. That's something that you wouldn't really know unless you met someone from there. We love to sing, and we have our traditional dances that we do with our music. Yeah, and for Italy, I'd say one thing I would want to share with someone that has never been there or never lived there is there's so much to explore there. Everyone knows the Italian culture being super rich and super old, but when you think about it, you only think about the main cities like Rome or Venice or Milan, but it's all around in Italy. So even the most smallest villages have these ancient ruins and really cool stories to tell. So I would encourage anyone that's going there to not just go to the big cities where, I mean, everyone goes there, but there's all these other millions of equally culturally rich places to visit. And you're going to actually interact more with the people that really live there and get the full experience, I'd say.
Well said. Well said. So I'm going to turn over to you, Tina. But one of the things I'm interested to know from everybody, and this doesn't have to be your question, Tina, but just for you guys to keep on the back burner, is given what we just learned about each other, right? You know, we've all shared different things. And you think of how that just expands your mindset, your worldview, your just kind of empathy, just all these different things, you know, that it expands when you're hearing somebody's narrative or somebody's story. Now, my question is, how well do you know your peers, right? Outside of just the people you normally associate with, you know, people in teams or in groups, do you tend to keep conversations transactional or just kind of like surface level? Or have you had the opportunity to get to know people a little deeper and also learn about them beyond just surface level?
I can start
Yep.
this question just to let everyone have a chance to think. I'd say I always want to learn everybody's stories on a deeper level and really get to know them. That's my goal with any long-term friendship that I want to have. But I found that in our situation and in our day-to-day lives, we're moving so fast and we don't have a lot of time to really sit down and get to a deep conversation and just connect with someone on that level. So that's something that I want to be better at. And that's one of the reasons why we started this. So I'd say I definitely have so much room to improve, but it's something that's always in the back of my mind. Like, I want to keep asking more questions about where they grew up or how they got here. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like it's very hard being in like a 1 year program and we have so much going on in our lives that it's harder to connect, but I do think that I try to make an effort in terms of like diversifying my friend groups and who I get to know and like not just staying where I feel comfortable. So just making sure that like my reach is there and I'm actually trying to get to know others like of different cultural like backgrounds because our program, the MSB program, is just full of like people with diverse stories from multiple different countries and whatnot. So there's just so much to learn. And I try to take that opportunity when it's available. But of course, like Tina said, it's a work in progress, especially like now we have a little bit more time and there have been events that I put on where we can actually have time to talk and get to know each other. Like even this past like Lunar New Year, I got to know so many more of my or New Year, Lunar New Year event that we just had. I got to know so many more of my classmates, just having that space where we could like gather as a community, gather as a program, and get to learn more about each other. So I definitely say the events that we've had have like held that space for us to do that. And just in our day-to-day like class time, just talking to someone that you never talked to before, or because our programs also switch who we're in classes with or in sections with. So you definitely see faces that you've seen previously but never had a chance to actually interact with. So I love that we are afforded that ability to keep the conversations going. So just like, I guess, capitalizing on that and continuing to talk to someone new or talk to someone a little bit more than I would, and just making sure that I'm making a conscious effort to be uncomfortable and get to know others because no, even if there are cultural barriers, you're still gonna have so much in common with someone that you would never know unless you talk to them. So just making that first effort to talk is something I'm like trying to be better at. And I think that so far I'm doing good. I love group of friends that I've talked to. I love the people in my program. So just building on those relationships moving forward.
I love that. Be uncomfortable. It's a great way to put it.
I can go next. So I think, yeah, I mean, it's really difficult to kind of find the time to actually get to know someone, especially, now that we're all older. I mean, I don't know. I don't mean to say that, okay, we're old and so we're not going to socialize, but as I think we move on to each stage of our life, the time that we have to spend with other people is less. And because we carry forward the people that we've already spent time with, already built relationships with, there's even less space for someone new. And I think as that happens, we're limited in terms of our capacity to actually form those deep relationships now. And I really try to work against that because one of the things like the consequences of moving around so much is that you don't end up having like a lasting friendship or a lasting relationship. Each time I move, it's like a break to like whatever I had going on, and then okay, next place, making new friends, a new social circle. So for me, it was like very new to come here and then like discover that okay, people aren't really getting into groups. People kind of just like hang out with either the people that they're, living with, or they kind of just hang out alone. So in my head, it's like, okay, so I'm not here to like, build my group all over again, But those kinds of struggles exist. And oftentimes you don't really know whether that's what another person wants as well. I think that is something I still struggle with where I can talk to someone and I have a great time having a conversation with them during the day, but I'm not sure if they want to continue talking, if they want to deepen the friendship or the relationship. And so, kind of judging that intent from the other side is also tough to do at this point. And that kind of makes you feel like, okay, maybe I don't want to reach out now because I'm not sure if they want to hang out. So, being in that kind of like limbo of like, okay, what are we doing this? Are we not? Kind of half the time ends up going in that. And then you're like, okay, no, I have to get it together. And then, I liked talking to that person, so I'm gonna try talking to them again. And so it's like given that it's a short program as well, it's kind of like a difficult process to get through. But I think I know Bashir can probably relate to this as well. We're both on the SEC for the MSBA program, which is for those of you who don't know, it's like the Student Engagement Council, where we're actually supposed to organize events for the program and kind of put the students' best interests forth to the administration, acting kind of like a liaison between the admin and the students. So I think being in that position also forces me to like socialize with people that I may not normally talk to, just to better understand the student body and see how like I can make the events better or come up with more engaging ways to get the cohort together. So that has really pushed me out of my comfort zone, I think. But yeah, I think it's a work in progress, and my skills for moving around a lot are definitely helping me now. So I'm grateful about that.
Yeah, I agree a lot with kind of what everyone has said at this point. Um, I think pace of the program is definitely a factor, especially with like keeping up with material. I personally am working as well, and SEC extracurricular activities and then job applications and all this stuff. But I will say SEC has made it, I think, easier to get to know a wider range of people, specifically since you have to be at, well, it's that Sheree likes us to be at all the events or as many events as we can make it to. So you get to interact with different cultures, and the SEC itself is like a combination of people of many cultures already. I think I've never had an issue necessarily getting to know people outside of my own cultural group because I don't have too much of my own cultural group around me so far throughout like as I've progressed through my educational career. I did IB. There was only two Middle Easterns in all of our IB program, me and another kid. So I was forced to interact with the rest of the class, and then same thing with university. I think there was only one other Arab that I knew at UNCG that was in the same program as me. And then same thing in this program. Actually, funny enough, there's one other Arab that I know, or two actually that I know. So I think being already uncomfortable with or not necessarily uncomfortable, but already being put in situations where I've interacted with people of different cultures, and different backgrounds. I don't necessarily struggle with that integration, of like breaking the ice or stuff like that. But I do agree, like I could definitely do a lot more effort, be more social, be more, and put myself more out there. And like Makeenie said, be uncomfortable.
You say get comfortable with being uncomfortable, huh? And you got, just by being here today, you've made a great start with that. So you know, you guys got me thinking, I would love to know, and I think I asked this Tina and I were on a call last week. You know, there's that signature moment. There, you can say there's signature moments that happen throughout your life. But think of one like signature moment that shaped a lot of who you are now, a lot of the way you think, the way you view the world. Now, trust me, there will be signature moments happening throughout your life, but just the ones where you can kind of point back to, you say, man, like when X happened, that changed something in me that drove me to do X, or that this is why I am. This is why I think like I do now. This is why I do what I do now. What is that thing that you can think of that I just like to call it one of the signature moments and impacts in your life, right? And while you're thinking, I'll give you one just so you have time, just kind of go through your memory bank of things. Um, I think for me, I can remember, and this is like, I mean, I'm going back to elementary school, right? I'll just go back that far. I remember being in class. I remember this kid who I thought that he was smart, and I thought, okay, I'm just as smart as him. And I remember he would be leaving school like twice a week to go somewhere. And I said, hey man, why are you always leaving twice, a week to go? He said, oh, I'm in the gifted program. And so I go, I go to another school 2 days a week. Because I'm in the gifted program, whatever. And I was like, wait a minute. I was like, hold up. I was like, dude, I'm just as smart as you are. And I think I must have been like in the, I don't know, fourth or fifth grade or something. And I was like, oh, no, 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 no. I said, no, if you're going, I know I should be going. So I remember I went to the teacher, and the reason why this is like, it's like significant, because even at that age, I was advocating for myself, right? Like nobody told me. It was just, I was like, whoa, wait a minute, you're going? I was like, well, why am I not going? And so I went to the teacher like immediately. I said, hey, I was like, how do I get into the gifted program? I was like, he's going. I said, I'm just as smart as him. And she was like, well, you have to take this test. I was like, hey, sign me up for that test. I will take it. Anyway, took the test and passed it. And so I started going to the gifted program. As a matter of fact, I don't remember, I kind of remember that vividly. My mother told me that actually when I got home that day, I was so pissed off. She said I was talking to her about it, and she said that I called the principal. I looked at the principal's phone number, and I called him and said, "Hey, it's like I need to be in that gifted program. I need to know what the steps are, what the process is." And she was just like laughing about that, because she said the principal always reminded her like, "Yeah, your son, he's pretty he advocates for what he wants. So he's actually called." So anyway, so that was kind of something like, I look back, it just kind of shaped my mentality about, hey, always advocating for yourself, or if you feel you should be involved in something, a part of something, just ask, right? Just kind of say, hey, what's the process for that? So that's mine. And whoever wants to jump in next can.
So
I can go next.
actually,
Oh, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, go ahead, Tina. No, no,
You
go.
got it.
So there's actually two kind of moments that like always I've gotten asked this question actually, funny enough, before. Uh, and there's two moments that have like been ingrained in my memory. One was when I was in like elementary school, and I used to like I was in AL, similar to that program, and we would have to do like extra assignments, right? And I remember there was it had to do with something related to math. I was like a little bit behind, and my mom, who has at that time hasn't been in the U.S. for that long, uh, well, when I was a kid, so she didn't speak really great English, but she had an Arabic to English dictionary and she stayed up with me that week and helped me finish like this project while translating everything from English to Arabic so she could understand it, and then back to Arabic to English to help me out. And I think that at that moment I was like, okay, wow, like my mom is heavily invested in my education, so this has to be something of importance that I do sometime during my life. Like I need to uh like I'm very privileged to be here, and at the same time take advantage of that privilege. And then the second moment, kind of on like a sadder note, was when my dad had his open heart surgery. My true freshman year of college, um, and I was pre med at that time. Funny enough, uh, and spending a year and a half like throughout hospitals through different surgeries made me realize, wait a second, I actually don't want to do anything relating to medicine. But it also kind of showed me that like time is very much limited. So kind of conquer each day as it comes, because tomorrow is never really promised. Thankfully, my dad is doing great, and through even after all the complications, he can't like he's fully healthy now. But it kind of pushed me to like, I guess like speed up every like not necessarily speed up, but like don't wait on things, take things as they come, like make the most out of each day, and like continue to be like ambitious and like conquer as much as you can in a way. Sorry, that was the two moments.
No, thank you for sharing. Um, it's hard to follow up on that. Mine was a little uh kind of same time frame. I was in middle school, I think, and it's volleyball related. So you guys know I came to Wake Forest to be on the volleyball team and get my degree at the same time. But back in Italy, there was a time that I really wanted to quit because I was I wasn't playing. I was on the bench and I got injured and I had to go through to the doctor's office once a week and I had to get 6 shots in my back every week. And that whole process of coming back from a really bad injury kind of threw me off the whole volleyball athlete path. And I remember I even got better from this injury and I was playing well. But in the end, after my team made it to the final, I didn't play. So I was just sitting on the bench and actually not even on the bench. They had to bring in they chose to bring in some younger girls because there was enough people in my position. So I was actually in the audience. So I had this immense feeling of being defeated. And I was with my team. I was doing everything with them, having lunch, going to the hotels and everything, but I was in the audience. And at this point, I thought like, okay, life is trying to tell me this is not the path for me. Like, I want to quit. Like, it's not going where I wanted. But I had this one coach that I'm still really close to this day. He came up to me and like, even though we won, after we won the final, everyone's crying of happiness, but I'm just crying because I'm upset. And then this one coach came up to me and hugged me and he told me like, just don't give up. That's all he said. And that was enough for me to keep going and to keep pursuing something that really made me happy, even though in that moment it made me really feel very defeated. Um, so from that I learned how to be resilient. And in the end, it ended up working great for me because I got to come here and I got to play in my college years. And I've learned so much and gained so much from volleyball that I'm forever grateful for. So I'm glad I kept going with it, even though it seemed like the end of the world at the time. So that was a big event for me that kind of shaped the path that I chose in life.
Wow, man, you guys got me about to cry over here. Like, I'm serious, staring all these tear jerkers, man. Come on, Makeenie, you already went, right? Oh, that's what I thought. Go ahead.
Not yet. I'm still thinking just because I feel like I've also good memories and bad. I just lose them sometimes. But um I would say that there are also two that kind of stick out to me and they kind of play hand in hand. So the first one I would say was during that transition of like senior year into college. I've always one of the things I struggle with, or I'm much better at it now, but internalizing everybody's expectations of me and not figuring out what I expect from myself was a really big problem for me, or just the struggle that I've had. And I realized like during that transition, starting college, my mom she had a conversation with me, just letting me know that she's proud and that I have autonomy over my own life, no matter what, like, culturally you're taught to, of course, take care of your own and whatnot. So she's just like, she reassured me that, you have to do what's going to make you happy in all things. And so, of course, you hear it and then you're like, okay, yes, mom. But in the back of your head, you're like, I still know what I need to do for the family, type of thing. And then later on, of course, it got better, but in 2022, like latter 2022, unfortunately, I lost a few of my friends, and they were just such positive people, like also, shooting for their dreams, like literally the sweetest people who would always motivate others to like be their best selves. And it all happened at a time where it's funny enough, like one of them I was having a conversation with the previous week about just, life and like what I need to do. And it was just like kind of a play-by-play of the same conversation I had with my mom a few years before. So it was just it just really was a time in my life where I sat down with myself and realized, okay, I truly need to live life for myself, do the things that make me happy, not only in an academic setting, but realizing who I am and what I want in terms of my connection with people, my love for travel, my love for food, like just making sure that in whatever I'm doing, I'm like focusing on me first. Like it's okay to be selfish sometimes, just because like you're never gonna lose who you are and like how much love you have for others by losing love for yourself. So it was just a matter of like, making sure that I can help myself before I can help others and making sure that I'm living my life for me and whatever I'm doing moving forward. And like since that moment, everything like I've felt much better like as a person, like I'm better for myself, so now I'm better for others. And just yeah, like I just think that's something that I'll take like forever with me and like I don't harp on those things like I used to.
Wow. Y'all are killing me. Seriously. And that's why I'm glad this is recorded and, people, can hear these narratives and these stories. Um, and it always amazes me, talk with Tina and be like, man, you can really get to know people in a short amount of time. You just ask questions, right? I mean, it's what, five of us on here. We haven't even been an hour yet. And I feel like I've learned more about you than I ever would just when we just pass in and we don't get a chance to just sit down and talk and you see us. So that always baffles me. Let me ask you guys another question. And I know
Wait,
we're getting close
you did
to,
go.
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Right, we're missing one more.
Oh, who are we missing?
Oh,
Deekshanya.
me.
I'm so sorry.
Oh no, you're good. Yeah, I was thinking about what that moment would be. I think so this is a story from back from senior year of high school to um, first year of undergrad. So I really wanted to go back to the US because I had moved from the US to India in the middle of my sophomore year of high school. And I wanted to start my undergrad in the US. So I wanted to get into some US university. But because I'm an international student, aid is just not available. And my family situation was such that I had to get full scholarship on tuition, on everything to be able to go and study in the US. And I had high hopes of making that happen. So I was like, okay, I'm going to apply, play the numbers game, apply to as many colleges as possible, and like somehow get there and then figure out because I think the US serves as a really great sort of like starting pad for someone who's still trying to figure out where they want to go, what career path they want to choose. And I was so used to like my education had been mostly in the US, and so I wanted to be back here. And so I ended up applying to like 50 something colleges at the end of my senior year of high school. And these are like Ivy League colleges, like all kinds of tiers, just to make sure I cover my bases. And I'm hoping that one of these colleges will give me an acceptance and a full ride. But so then I hear back. So I applied to Harvard early. I hear back from Harvard and they said, okay, you're deferred to like the regular decision timeline. So then I'm like, okay, there's some hope, but I wasn't sure. And then everything, all the other colleges, I am getting rejections. And the thing about this is that because of the financial situation, there are only 5 or 6 universities in the US that are need blind. So essentially they don't check whether you need finances before they decide whether to accept you or not. And so I had to only focus on those colleges because otherwise no college is going to get an international student to come study, pay full ride. You know, it's a tough kind of gamble to take on one student when they could educate multiple people with the same money. So I was in a super tough situation, and it's kind of like it's a sad story because every single college was a rejection. All of this, each time I'd open my email, go back to the portal to check if I got accepted, it'd be rejected again. And it's just like you start to question, okay, is it just my financial situation, or maybe just I'm not good enough to go to that university? And so that started to happen a lot of times, and you can imagine like going through like 50 applications is already a lot, and then getting rejection letters for them despite the time being put into them. It was, I think, one of my, I would say, kind of like my most prized failure. And I say that because as much as it was on paper a failure in the sense that I got rejected from most of the colleges, and the ones that did accept, I didn't want to go to. I think I got some university in South Dakota, and that wasn't even like a full ride. And so I was like, I'm not gonna live in the middle of nowhere. So it was like that was kind of an experience that I think to this day I've realized the positive consequences of, like writing those college application essays, and they really make you think. Like it's not easy to get a good one out. Like so you really have to reflect on who you are as a person. And I think in that process I learned so much about myself that I carried forward in the years that I spent in undergrad. And I ended up going to the best liberal arts college in India. And I think that has given me even more of a network. I think professors from Harvard, from other Ivy League universities would come teach at our university in India. And I think it all turned out to be for the best. But just kind of like playing it back, that would be a moment where I really thought, okay, so what I hope to do, I can't do anymore. And that means I need to go on this path, and I have no other choice. Didn't like it, but then as time goes on, you realize this is what was meant to happen, and it was for the best. So I think that would be like a special moment.
Hey, y'all got me feeling like I can run through a brick wall now. I mean, I was serious that after just hearing those stories of just how you overcame something, right? Whether it's a mental challenge, emotional, physical, whatever that challenge was or that thing, it's just like hearing your narratives. Wow, I'm feeling so inspired. And I just thought of this. What I would love to get from each of y'all. I want to get like something you would just recommend for not only me, but for people who hear this to read. So each of you like have read something that was like some type of seminal work that you like, oh man, it's my favorite book, or this is something, man, I read, or this is something, hey, you should read this. I'm reading this now. Whatever that thing is, what is that book that you would just say, hey, you should read this book and you'll learn more about X. So who wants to go first with that? I have a couple, and these are ones that just kind of shaped how I think about things. But I would say one, I read this book called From Good to Great by Jim Collins. It's an oldie but goodie. And it was about, just how good companies became great. Um, and then I read a book, uh, of course, the Seven Habits of Highly Successful People. That was another like oldie but goodie. And then there's some good autobiographies that I read. I think the autobiography of Thurgood Marshall, who was the first Black Supreme Court Justice in the United States. Just a fascinating story. Like you talk about hardships and overcoming like all types of barriers and challenges. I mean, it's just a fascinating story. Like I won't ruin it for you, but you get to see like how people overcome struggle and barriers and challenges and still achieve greatness, right? And that's just always so inspiring to me because you're just like, how? Like you're thinking about yourself, you're like, man, I just would have gave up. I just would have said, forget this, And these people who they some kind of way found a way to break through. So those are the three books I would recommend for you guys to read or get the Cliff Notes or audiobooks or whatever, I think it'd be kind of cool just to kind of see like how those authors, approach their material. So I'll stop there and let somebody else jump in.
I can jump in because I think this is a book that I have started to read recently, and I've been trying to get through it, but it's just like I actually have it right next to me. I don't know if you can see this, but it's like it's not that long, but it's like each chapter is like a philosophy paper by this person named Thomas Nagel, and the book is called Mortal Questions. And so I said how like I was a philosophy major in undergrad, right? So I really enjoyed reading philosophy, being questioned about like my core beliefs and things that you thought were true, but maybe are not actually true. And so that's kind of how I spent my 3 years of undergrad, kind of in like a existential crisis of like, oh my God, what is real, what is not. But I think it really would push people out of their comfort zone to think about questions that maybe are kind of looming over our head, but because of our day-to-day commitments we don't ever address. And so this book, I mean, the first chapter is like about death. So it's like it can get dark, it can get deep, and so it's just like I wouldn't say it's like a bedtime read or it's like a casual read. You really have to kind of give it time to sink in. You have to pay attention to every sentence. But if any of you have the time, I would really recommend. It can change your perspective on a lot of things, can make you question what you have been thinking is true or what you hold very close to you if you're ready for that kind of challenge. But yeah, I would really recommend.
Wow, Dee, you need to send me this book after. Funny enough, I've only recently started getting more into philosophy, and I was thinking about a book. I wanted to start super in the ancient days. So there's a really easy read called Tao Te Ching, and it's about the ancient Chinese philosophy called Tao. Probably you already know about it because no? Oh,
Oh
okay.
no, I specialized in like epistemology and ethics, so more on the recent side of philosophy. But yeah, that's really cool that you're into that.
It's super easy and it's kind of similar. It's every chapter is a poem and it's
Oh,
translated to that we can understand it now because ancient Chinese was very different.
yeah.
And it's about changing your habits and being a leader, and it's trying to relate it to this thing that the book describes as Tao. It's kind of hard to describe what it is. I'm still trying to figure that out. But one example that I can give that it was a little bit shocking to me, or like just a cool new thing to learn. The whole premise of Tao is that you should be like water, that you should be still like water and try to eliminate any crowdiness in your life, in your mind, in your spirit. So just to be still and let things happen as they are and not hold on to anything. So it's really challenging me to shift my habits and create space in my life for the new. And there was one metaphor that I really liked. For example, back to that topic of being like water. It was talking about how if you think about water streams like rivers and ponds and the ocean, all the rivers eventually flow into the bigger water stream. So all the rivers flow down into the ocean, which is at the bottom. And that's kind of how Tao describes leadership should be. So the leader should be below the people that they're leading, not above them, because that's how water flows. So that was something that to me was like, wow, that's so interesting. Because when you think about the person in charge, usually looking up, you're looking like at the top down leadership. But this was like the other way, like the being the servant and serving your people, even though you are on top of the hierarchy, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's called Tao Te Ching. And it's super short. It's like really thin. It's like 80 chapters of poems. So it's a nice way to start if you're wanting to get into philosophy.
Uh, so I have, I guess, two that came to mind. Um, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill is one. Kind of, purposely mold your thoughts and affirmations into actual physical things, and kind of keep reiterating that process through, writing them down each day and putting like an actual metric on how long it's going to take for you to get those things. And then the second book was The Power of Now, by, I believe it's Toll that wrote that book. And it's kind of, back to the idea of kind of like living in the present. And I think today we live in like a society where a lot of people are, unfulfilled and stressed, depressed, anxious, and stuff like that. And whether that be from like thinking about things that have happened to them in the past or things that they're trying to, worry about for the future. Sometimes I think it's best to just, focus on now and not worry about things that are outside of our reach, outside of our control, and letting go of like, one's ego and kind of like accept and surrender to the moment that we're in today. So those would be my two recommendations to kind of start off with.
I can go next. I'll say one of my favorite authors is, let's hope I'm saying her name right, Chimamanda Adichie, I think it is. I've read a couple of her books throughout the years, but one that is really small, really thin, really easy to read is We Should All Be Feminists. And it's not just the conventional thought that people have of like what feminism is. It's really from a deeper like cultural experiences, not just, perpetuating the stereotypes that are there, but also just showing you what culturally, like how things can look from both sides as a woman and what her perception is as an African woman, of men and how she's been treated because of that. And of course, being a Black woman myself, I resonate with that. But also like it's just a book that can help you like reflect on yourself and like attempt to make you like, think, how can I be a better person and how can I create a different world where people are treated like equitably, like, just a better world, a different world than we can think of. And also there's a really cool book that's, I think it's literally titled A Book of African Proverbs. And I think it was just really interesting for me to read when I got it as a gift. It's all these like different proverbs that are told. It's like African proverbs, but it's things you've heard like conventionally in America, like, yeah, different sayings that you might hear, but then you see like the version that's from different countries within Africa and how like they sort of like say it and the meaning to them. So just again, it just provided me with like a really interesting view of like, oh, the same like word how I translate it is not the same like cultural connotation to someone in Guinea or someone in Nigeria or someone in China or someone in America. Like it's just like it was just so interesting to see. And then like it got me wanting to learn more of like, okay, put this proverbs in what does it mean in this country? What does it mean in that country? And like just seeing how different phrases too can like have such different like cultural meanings was really interesting to me. So if you want to learn a little bit more about like, cross-cultural communications, that's really helpful. If you just want to learn more about like, how you can see things from a different person's perspective and like create a different world that values everyone, how they are, who they are, and what they do. I think reading something by Chimamanda Adichie is also really good.
Wow, man, that's deep. I can't wait to. I'm trust you. I'm going to check all those out. So that's why I got everything recorded, so I can go back and write down the names and all of that. Hey, look, I know we're at time, so let me do this. Let me end this portion of the show, and I'll stop recording, and then I want to talk with y'all before y'all sign off. So, hey, this is episode 1 of Real Talk with Roderick. So I want to thank our guests, Bashir, D, and Makeenie. Thank you so much for just sharing personal parts of your narrative, things that people wouldn't know about you unless they asked. I learned so much. I know each of you did, and I hope that collectively, we move forward differently as a result of hearing each other's stories, and the people who hear our stories, I hope that they move collectively different going forward as we just see the value just in talking and just asking simple questions that can really impact the way you think and change your thoughts, or at least have you consider different perspectives and narratives, right? So that's the whole point, is being able to be one of the things we talk about is fostering a global and multicultural mindset within the School of Business. And so this series is part of that, right? How do we foster that global and multicultural mindset? You guys are here, but I always say, you guys each came from somewhere, or you've been all these different places. So I say we educate you here, to go there, and there could be anywhere, right? So I don't know where you're going to end up. You all are like moving around and getting to know different people. So we educate you here, but it's to go there, and there could be anywhere. So thank you again, and looking forward to our next episode when we do this again.
Thank you.